So we're going to have to explain what money is, why assets does not equal income. I know that is painfully basic, but when I started tweeting about this, the amount of people in my replies who genuinely could not distinguish between income and assets. Why higher taxes don't equate to higher revenues. Again, socialists, mind blown by that one. Why wealthy people don't just sit on wealth, and why the state does not create prosperity, it merely relocates what other creates. So incredibly basic ideas. Hope I don't bore you with this one, but it is fundamental if you happen to be in government, in basically any function whatsoever at this point. So this is a sort of an economic intervention. Maybe I'll send the Labour front bench a complimentary subscription to Brokenomics to help them along with this. This isn't about opinions. They think it is. These are about fundamental principles that socialists ignore. Incentives matter. Resources are scarce. In fact, there's a book series I quite like called The Culture Series by Ian M. Banks, and it's about a post-scarcity socialist civilization. I mean, it's not set in the future. They're aliens, but technologically in our far future, and they operate on a socialist system. And I can see that in theory it does kind of work when you have basically no limitations on resources or productive output. In all other cases, when resources are scarce, socialism doesn't work. Wealth is created, it isn't just redistributed. Capital itself is reproductive. Don't worry if you don't know what capital is yet. If you're a socialist, we will get to that. And the intentions behind a policy genuinely don't matter, only the outcomes. And we're going to give plenty of evidence behind that. I mean, we'll get to, France had a wealth tax. It caused 70,000 millionaires to leave, and it cost 200 billion euros in capital. So quite significant. I mean, Sweden abandoned its wealth tax in 2007, noting that it distorted saving behaviour significantly, and it drove out capital. In fact, the UK used to have a top rate of tax of 98% in the 1970s, and it drove capital abroad. Notable names that you might have heard of: Rolling Stones, David Bowie, a whole bunch of investors. They just left. The Henley report, which I've definitely cited that in Brokenomics before. Henley's track high net worth individuals. That they predict another 17,000 millionaires will leave before this tax hits, and their previous reports, if anything, have understated the amount of high net worth individuals who will leave in response to taxes. The socialists often assume that they're still living in the late 19th century, where everyone wealthy just has a landed estate and a manor on it. These days, a lot of the capital is things that can be relocated very quickly to basically anywhere in the world that's more agreeable. So socialists always assume that the economy is they're very static in their thinking. They always assume the economy is a pie to be divided and not a bakery itself that can be expanded and can serve more and can increase its output. They think that millionaires are basically stuck in the UK like serfs, just better tailoring and Range Rovers. They don't understand that these people can be moved. Today wealth is global, it's mobile, it's digitally expressed, and it's often intangible. Things like intellectual property, company equity, crypto even, or just talent like Rolling Stones and David Bowie in the former example. So we need to know what money really is. Yes, you can print it, but you can still be poor if you do so. We've got to get that distinction between assets and income straightened out. Taxing the rich won't raise revenue. It will just basically cause emigration to increase. Wealth is not idle. It's funding your job. It's your phone. It's your energy grid. It's a whole bunch of things that you rely on. And it is not. It is not just suspended money that needs to be taken, because the money itself is not the end. Something that they completely miss. Oh, and also, and this is really fundamental, price signals matter. Inflation is theft, and government doesn't create jobs. You do. So that should be it. So let's start with why. What is money? Because you can print money, you can still starve. The socialists will say, okay, why is anyone poor if the government can just print more money? My daughter asked me this, and I understood the question because she's 9 and therefore could be excused being confused about this. And the way I explained it to my 9-year-old, and maybe this will work on a Labour front bencher, is that you have to remember that the money is simply it's not the economy. It's more like the shadow that the economy casts. So imagine this. Okay, in one hand, I've got all of the goods and services that an economy produces, and in the other hand, I've got all of the money for that economy, and the price of everything that is real and tangible is simply the amount of money divided by the amount of stuff, goods or services. So if you increase the amount of money, all you're doing, you haven't increased the amount of stuff, goods and services, you've simply increased the amount of money, and the stuff gets redenominated by the greater amount of money. So think of it like this, and this is how I explained it to my 9-year-old. Imagine that you've got a table, and the table you've noticed isn't big enough. Your family has grown because you've shipped in a whole bunch of Afghans or whatever it is. But your table is no longer big enough. And you decide you want a bigger table. A socialist solution to that would be to add more inches onto the ruler. So that instead of an inch being, whatever it is, that much, an inch now gets smaller and smaller and smaller, so you can fit more inches onto a ruler. And now when you measure the table has got much larger. But it hasn't fundamentally helped you in any way. All you've done is redenominate the length of the table by adding more inches to your ruler. That is what money printing does. It doesn't change anything fundamental. And we're still suffering from the Bank of England's post-2020 QE program. It didn't create wealth. All it did was lead to higher prices, particularly asset prices. And it led to food inflation peaking at about 19%, because all of the stuff is being redenominated by more of the measuring implement, which is the money. So money is a medium of exchange. It's a unit of account. It's a store of value. It is not value in of itself. It is a way of tracking who has claims to real goods and services. It's just the shadow of the economy, but it is not it's the shadow that the economy casts, but it's not it's not the economy itself. Imagine you've got £1 billion, yay, but you're on a desert island. Well, it doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do you the remotest good whatsoever, because there is no genuine wealth there. There's no capital. There's I mean, okay, you might be able to put a price on anything on your desert island, your coconut and your patch of sand or something, but it's just fundamentally worthless by itself. Real wealth is output. It is your ability to produce food, tools, skills, housing, technology, all of that stuff. When Germany in the 1920s tried to get out of a situation similar to the one that we are hurtling into by increasing the amount of money, they had 3 double-decker bus size money printers running day and night, just churning out money. And it got to the point where people were having to push their salaries home on a wheelbarrow, but they were still starving. Zimbabwe you've probably all seen that the $100 trillion note that was produced. But that note could not buy an egg. Venezuela, hyperinflation made the money worthless despite everybody having lots of money. So you don't want money. What you want is the things that money can buy. You need things to be produced. And this is coming back to the wealth tax, because this is a fundamental point. The total wealth of a nation is its productive capacity, its ability to make stuff and do stuff that people value. So printing money doesn't create any more stuff. It just redenominates the existing stuff by a ruler that now has more inches on it. So it's a scorecard. In a modern economy, it has millions of people producing billions of goods and services. Money lets them coordinate without barter or without knowing each other. And it works because of trust in that money. I know that if I take payment for something in money, that tomorrow I can spend that on something of which I value. And the socialist tools, such as money printing, or quantitative easing, whatever, the MNT nonsense, I did an episode on that, the universal basic income, it all erodes that trust. And we are getting increasingly to the point of fiat fragility. If that trust breaks, I've done this in other episodes, but if that trust breaks, then this money that you're chasing won't serve any function at all. Okay, let's start linking this to wealth taxes and socialist policy. When everyone has money, but there's nothing to buy, prices rise and nobody is richer. Okay, so let's get into assets versus income, because this is, again, something that socialists genuinely struggle with. They all imagine that rich people, I don't know if you get this reference, but there's a popular cartoon series when I was a kid of Scrooge McDuck. And Scrooge McDuck had a big vault full of gold coins, and he would dive into it and swim around in it. And this is genuinely, and I say this regretfully because it is so fantastically, simplistically wrong, but that is genuinely how socialists see rich people, that they just accumulate a big vault of money. So a socialist will say, well, there's a rich person like Jeff Bezos or whoever it is. He's got 100 billion. Let's just tax him, take it off him, and with that we will fix everything. They genuinely think that. The problem is that assets, things like, it is not a vault of coins that you jump into and swim around. It's business shares, it's property, it's intellectual property, it's machines, it's land, it's art, it's patents, it's processes. Most of a person's wealth is going to be illiquid, subject to market valuation, marginal valuation. Their value is not money, it's just expressed in money. And that is a potential net worth if all of their productive assets were sold and converted into money. Although if you were to actually try and do that in any sort of a hurry, you would tank the price of those assets and you would actually end up getting a fraction of that. So income is what you receive in exchange for work or ownership. So wages, dividends, rents, capital gains, royalty. Let's say my wealth was a skyscraper and nothing else. I cannot buy a yacht because I'd have to sell the skyscraper first in order to buy a yacht.
If you would like to see the full version of this premium video, please head over to lotuseaters.com and subscribe to gain full access to all of our premium content.